Chapter 54. One day, the children came to school very excited about something. They told us a fortune teller was wandering through the nearby villages. He was telling people their future. When Dongmei heard this, she turned to me and said, "I have to see him." "Me too," I said. "Where is he now?" Dongmei asked the students. "On the other side of the bridge," they said. "We just passed him on the way to school." Dongmei and I hurried outside and saw the lone figure in the distance beyond the bridge. We crossed the bridge and called to him. He turned and watched us approach. He was a surprisingly young man for a fortune teller, in his mid-30s, perhaps, and quite good-looking. He had large, piercing eyes and a long, stringy beard. He held a staff and carried a bedroll and a small wooden box that contained his instruments for telling fortunes. The children followed us and gathered around. "We want you to tell us our fortunes," Dongmei said to the man. He studied us for a while. 5 fun, he said, each. "All right," she said. "We have that." He sat on his bedroll, opened his box, and pulled out a worn and soiled deck of ancient cards, long and narrow, with strange-looking faces and symbols printed on them. He sorted and shuffled them and laid them face down carefully on the box top. He looked at Dongmei and said, "Teacher, take 3 cards." She turned excitedly to me. "He already knows I'm a teacher," she said. She picked out 3 cards and handed them to him. He looked at them and closed his eyes and mumbled a long, sonorous mantra. The children who had seen him work his wonders before whispered that he was getting guidance from the gods. It was quiet for several seconds, and then he spoke. I see. You are very, very unhappy here. You are from far, far away." Yes, Dongmei said. "Shanghai." "Yes, Shanghai," he said. "And you want to go home." "Yes, I do. Very much." "When?" she asked. The fortune teller closed his eyes and appeared to be listening to distant voices that he alone could hear. He nodded acknowledgement. He opened his eyes and looked straight into Dongmei's eyes. "You will go home," he said. "When?" "When?" she asked. "Soon," he said. She grinned broadly. "And you will never grow old," he said. "Not like me." "Oh," she sighed with relief. But you're not old. Never grow old, he repeated. Not like me. Forever young. Dongmei laughed. How perfect! I picked 3 cards and handed them to him. Again, he chanted and meditated before speaking. Will I go home too? I asked him. Yes, you will go home. Teacher, he responded. He closed his eyes and listened to his distant voices for a minute before continuing. But you will grow old. You will grow old very, very far away. Before I could respond to his prediction, Dongmei burst out laughing. Poor Yimao, she said, you will lose your beauty, but I won't. The children all laughed and danced around us. The fortune teller watched me. I felt there was something he was not saying. The deeper meaning of his words, perhaps. What had he seen? Could he really tell the fortune, the future? Is there more? I asked. He gathered up his cards and put them back in his box. No more, he said. I cannot reveal the God's deepest secrets. If I did, I'd lose my power. Oh. We paid him and thanked him, and all of us returned to the school laughing. Dongmei was happier than I'd seen her in weeks. Several days after the meeting with the fortune teller, Dongmei and I ran low on rice. I offered to go alone to the commune headquarters to pick up the month's ration. Dongmei was not feeling well. She reminded me to watch out for snakes. A crowd had gathered at the commune headquarters. There was a loud buzz of conversation, and everyone was crying. A woman approached me, weeping and trembling violently. I stopped her and asked, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's happening?" "Haven't you heard?" she wailed. "Heard what?" Oh, the sky has fallen. The sky has fallen. Our beloved Chairman Mao has passed away in Beijing. She choked before hurrying on her way, inconsolable. The crowd was frightened and disoriented. No one could really understand the news. Many disbelieved it and said it was impossible. Chairman Mao, dead? How could this be? He was supposed to be immortal. The thought of his passing had never crossed the mind of anyone. Mao was supposed to live 10,000 years. Had he really lived less than 83? I had difficulty getting anyone's attention inside the store. But finally, I succeeded in acquiring 40 pounds of rice. I hoisted to my shoulder and hurried home. I never stopped to rest, and I ignored the fatigue in my legs. When I at last saw our little school in the distance, my heart began to race. I put down my burden on the far side of the bridge and shouted, "Dongmei! Dongmei! Good news! Good news!" She stepped outside and shaded her eyes as she tried to make me out in the distance. "What is it? What is it?" she called. "He is dead! He is dead!" I shouted, laughing as I spoke. "Chairman Mao is dead! The red sun has set!" She ran to me and caught me in her arms, and we spun around, laughing. "That fortune teller is right. He was right," she said. "We are going home. Ima, this is what we've been waiting for." We burst into tears of joy. We stayed up all night, singing and reciting poems and dreaming about the future. Dongmei said that when she got home, she'd visit all of her relatives and then start studying for college. "I think I'll be a doctor," she said. "What about you?" "I think I'll be a professor," I told her. "A professor of English literature, just like my father." "Oh, but let's never lose contact, Dongmei. We have to get together at least once every year, no matter where we live." "We will," she laughed. The entire nation seemed to collapse into a long night of grief and mourning. Funeral music played from every loudspeaker in every village. People wept openly. Dongmei and I were given instructions to bring our students to the commune headquarters to participate in the official memorial ceremony. We set out early in the morning because our school was the farthest of the mountain schools from the commune headquarters. We were among the last to arrive. As we approached the headquarters, we saw children from all the surrounding villages and hundreds of peasants gathered in a gloomy assembly. Dirges blared, one after another, over a loudspeaker and echoed up and down the mountains. A large portrait of Chairman Mao, draped in black with white flowers around it, had been raised above a platform. All of us were ordered to face the picture and bow. Nearly everyone was crying. Some were wailing and flailing their arms about in the air, utterly stricken, when others were merely somber and wept silently, and dabbed handkerchiefs to their cheeks. I tried to squeeze out a few tears, but could not. Inside me, there was too much excitement and joy. As speaker after speaker stood and praised Mao, I wanted to laugh out loud and dance. Dongmei and I exchanged mischievous glances occasionally. Each of us knew what the other was thinking. It had taken us 2 hours to walk to the site. Many students were exhausted. Some of them sat down during the tedious ceremony. I didn't want to be charged with teaching disrespectful or disloyal students. So I went among them, pulling them to their feet and turning them to the portrait. When the ceremony ended and the groups began to break up and go their separate ways, I caught a glimpse of Yiping. He was busy with his students not far away, and he hadn't noticed me. I felt my heart pounding and my face growing warm, and I wasn't sure what to do. Several hundred grieving people stood between us. As the crowd began to break up, some were pushed in one direction, the rest in another. Yiping and I were carried in opposite directions. Students on either side of me held my hands and arms. I began to cry when I saw Yiping turn and start down a path in the midst of his children, his students. I tried to call his name, but no sound came out. Several adults sought to comfort me, assuming I was weeping for Chairman Mao. But I wasn't. I wept for Yiping. Despite our expectations of a sudden change in our lives, day followed tedious day, and nothing seemed to happen. But Dongmei and I did not give up. We embraced new hope tightly. Word at least came from Beijing that a new policy was about to be instituted. University entrance examinations would be administered throughout the country. The rules assured that students would be admitted to the universities partly on test scores rather than solely on family backgrounds. Because of the massive number of high school graduates from the previous decade who had not been allowed to continue their education, only the top 2% of those taking the examination could be admitted to a college or university. Educated youth throughout the nation began to cram tirelessly during the next weeks, brushing up on their studies. Each knew that his or her life hung in the balance, that a top score on the exam really would dramatically alter the future. Because few reference books were available, highly prized hand-copied editions and commentaries were passed from hand to hand in the mountains. Almost miraculously, Dongmei's parents in Shanghai mailed her 3 old textbooks that salvaged from somewhere. The mathematics, physics, and chemistry texts were valued by us more than copies of Mao's Little Red Book had been by the Red Guards. After teaching each day, we spent hours together in our room, studying. Some nights we went without sleep. As dawn was breaking, we quizzed each other on our studies. Both of us coached and encouraged the other. More than 300 educated youth in the commune took the 2-day examinations in the early December at the county high school. Each of us was seated at a desk. A pink test participation slip on the right corner of the desk. Before I began writing, I asked God for help. God, help me. Then I asked him again. I reminded him that I was a Christian. I decided to take no chances. I closed my eyes and asked Buddha. My ancestors, the Earth Father, the Earth Mother, and Chairman Mao, too. I asked them to help me. And to be sure I did not insult God, I asked him a 3rd time for help. When I was finished praying to every known deity, I picked up my pen, opened my examination, and began writing. On the way back to our quarters after the exam, Dongmei bubbled over with enthusiasm, but I was somber. I know I did well, she laughed. I could tell. Now all I have to think about is which university I will attend. I want to go back to Shanghai. Fudan University is my first choice. My parents are going to be so happy. I wasn't as optimistic. The exam had been very difficult. Well, Fudan is a good choice, I said, but I'm not sure I'm going anywhere, any place. Cheer up, Dongmei said. We studied together. I know you did well, Yimao. I'm sure you'll get your first choice of schools, too. We had not yet received notice of our scores when school was dismissed for the Spring Festival in January. In the more relaxed atmosphere of post-Mao China, educated youth were given longer leaves to go home for the holiday. While I was celebrating the arrival of the new year with my family, a letter arrived from the commune notifying me that I had scored high enough on the examination to be admitted to Anhui Teachers University in Wuhu, where my parents taught. It was my third choice of schools. My brother Yiding was notified that his score had qualified him for admission to the same school. Not only were we leaving the countryside, we were coming home. Because of the good news, I lingered for 2 extra days in Wuhu before returning to Tongxing. On the way back, I stopped at the commune headquarters and met half a dozen other educated youth who were returning from their holiday and picked up supplies. There was little joy among them. I learned that I was the only one educated youth in the commune who had been admitted to a university. I realized this meant that Yiping and Dongmei hadn't passed. I suddenly had mixed feelings about my good fortune. None of the others congratulated me. They cut short our conversations and commiserated only with each other. I pulled aside a young woman from a neighboring village and asked her, Why is everyone avoiding me? I've done nothing wrong. You remind us of our broken dreams, she said. I'm sorry, I told her, and then, I'm worried about Dongmei. I need to get back to our school. Dongmei is not there, she said. Where is she? Oh, Yimao. After learning of her score yesterday, Dongmei jumped from the ledge at the top of the mountain. Several villagers in the valley saw her fall. My legs weakened and I collapsed onto a bench. Oh, Dongmei! No! No! I wept. Dongmei, why? Why did you do this? Why wasn't I here to save you? The girl comforted me, but the other educated youth merely watched from a distance. After I recovered somewhat from the shock of this news, I climbed up the steep path to the school one last time. I crossed the bridge deftly and went inside the school. I expected to be greeted by Dongmei. I simply refused to believe that she was gone. Her clothing was laid out neatly on her bed. The textbooks we'd studied together were stacked in the corner. I sat on my bed once more and called out her name, as if I might summon her from wherever she had gone. Dongmei. As I lay down to rest, my face touched a sheet of paper on my pillow. It was a page from one of the notebooks we'd used when we prepared for our examinations. My name was scribbled across it in Dongmei's handwriting. "Yimao," it read. "I heard the good news. Congratulations. I am so happy for you. Do you remember the fortune teller and how we laughed at his words? Well, he was right. I don't want to grow old here, and I want to go home. If you ever think of me, remember the days and nights we spent here, laughing and dreaming. Forget the sadness and the tears. I remember the night you recited the poems for me that you'd recited for Yiping. Your recitation of Li Bai was my favorite. You ask how I spent my time. I nestle against a tree trunk and listen to autumn winds in the pines all night and day. Shantung wine can't get me drunk. The local poets bore me. My thoughts remain with you like the Wen River, endlessly flowing. Say goodbye to the children for me and tell them all to study hard. My thoughts remain with you, Yimao, endlessly flowing. Dongmei. When I finished reading her words, I felt as if I were suffocating. I went outside to breathe. I paced back and forth from the bridge to the school, weeping. Every few minutes, I looked up the path leading to the top of the mountain and called her name. Only the mournful echo of my own voice came back. Classes resumed the next day. I gathered the students in one room and told them I was the only teacher. I did not know if they had been told about Dongmei. I said, "Teacher Xiang asked me to tell you all to study very hard, and she thinks about you every day." My words were met by silence and tears. An official from the brigade headquarters came by that afternoon and told me that a new teacher would be arriving in 2 days. "I know you're leaving us," he said, "but I'd like you to stay until he gets here." I agreed. "I have a request," I said. "Can I see Dongmei before I go?" He gave me an uneasy look. I'm afraid. I'm afraid not, he said. They never found her. Some villagers saw her jump, but the valley is deep there. It is impossible to find her. I broke down again at his words. 2 days later, I left Tongxing School. On the way down the mountain, I decided to take a detour and find Yiping. As I neared his village, I passed around the settlement where the captured tiger had once been caged. I wondered what had happened to him. I noticed that the stack of stout beams that had been his cage were piled outside the shabby hut of the hunter. I recalled the wide-eyed peasants gaping at the trapped animal, his deep growl like distant thunder, and his ominous, persistent scratching. How I pitied him. I wondered if he'd escaped and if he was free again in the mountains. I hoped he was. As a last moment, I changed my mind about visiting Yiping. What was the point, after all? He wasn't leaving the mountains, and I was. Meeting him would shatter us both and remind us of the tragedy of our forced separation. It was far better, I felt, to carry Yiping in my heart, to remember him as he was when we recited poetry and climbed through the clouds, hand in hand. I turned around and walked slowly back past the dismantled tiger cage and descended to the valley floor. As I neared the base of the mountain, I sensed an uneasy burden being lifted slowly from my shoulders. My steps quickened and became lighter. A fresh morning breeze caressed and cooled my face. I felt like a feather falling from the sky, fluttering peacefully to the earth. I arrived at the bus stop and sat on my bag and waited. When I heard the engine of the bus laboring in the distance, even before I could see it, I rose. When it choked to a stop a few feet from me, I climbed aboard and found a seat. I watched out the window as we pulled away. Despite the joy of this moment, which I had dreamed about for so many years, my heart ached for those I was leaving behind. I looked up for the last time at the green peaks and the terraced rice paddies, the tea bushes, the drab huts, the huge, heavy clouds hugging the mountain, and the rich blue patches of sky. I whispered goodbye to the children, to the peasants, to all the educated youth who remained behind. I whispered goodbye to Dongmei and Yiping. Then I lowered my eyes, leaned forward, cradled my head in my hands and my eyes. My tears fell like raindrops on my bare feet and began to wash away the hard mountain soil. End of the book, Feather in the Storm.